InFocus.
Good afternoon and welcome to 22 News in Focus. I'm Ciara Speller. The employment rate in Massachusetts continues to fall as economic growth is rising. Many employers find themselves with plenty of job openings but short on qualified applicants. Today on 22 News in Focus, we'll be looking at the employment and training and job opportunities in Western Massachusetts. Joining me are David Cruz, who is the president and CEO for the MassHire Hampden County Workforce Board. Patricia Crosby is the executive director for MassHire Franklin Hampshire Workforce Board. And we have David Gedare. He's president and CEO for MassHire Holyoke Career Center. Thank you all for being here with us today.
Thank you.
I'd first like to have you discuss your organizations and what they do.
Yeah, MassHire Hampden County Workforce Board. We're one of the 16 workforce boards, a part of the MassHire system here in Massachusetts, and our primary function is to plan and coordinate the use of public money for workforce development, not only in Hampden County, but in collaboration with my colleague Patricia Crosby throughout really the entire Pioneer Valley region.
Patricia.
So I'm the head of the Franklin Hampshire Workforce Board, which covers Franklin and Hampshire County and the North Quabbin region. And the purpose of our organization, as David said, is to focus on public services, public funds for employment services, but also to be working with employers to find out what their needs are and to make sure that those services are addressing those needs.
I work at the MassHire Holyoke Career Center, and we're kind of the on-the-ground version of what they just talked about. We're chartered by the Workforce Board. They kind of oversee what we do. But really what we do is we focus in on the actual job seekers and what their needs are and what they need to do to prepare for work and make career changes, and equally work with the businesses to see what they need for skills and attributes for their employees.
Right, and so the MassHire Hampden and Franklin Hampshire Workforce Boards commissioned a study to create the Pioneer Valley Labor Market Blueprint. And that's a combined effort to gather information related to business and workforce challenges in the region. So why was the study commissioned?
It was actually an initiative led by the Massachusetts Workforce Skills Cabinet. So this is the Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development, also of Education, and also of Economic Development and Housing. And so this triumvirate of secretaries led this effort to ask each region, and they divided us into 6 or 7 regions statewide, to put together a core planning team to really look at what the needs were in their area and what the status quo was, who was coming out of the university programs and the vocational technical school programs and the high schools, what their skills were, what programs they were going into, and how those matched what industry was looking for, and to see where there were gaps.
Yeah, I think the other part, in addition to what Patricia said, is that our enabling legislation is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, and as part of that, all the workforce area boards in the country are required to do regional planning. And as Patricia said, here in the Pioneer Valley, we're partnering with Hampshire Franklin, and our focus in regional planning was to produce a blueprint, and the blueprint was the product of the regional planning process. And it's really the first time that the workforce development entities, the economic development entities, and the educational entities here in these 3 counties, got together and looked at both strategically where we're headed over the next 5 years, because this blueprint is a 5-year plan. We're now going into year 2 of the plan. So as Patricia said, it was an opportunity for us to step back, but also step forward and take a look at where we're going in terms of workforce and how, together with our economic development partners and our educational institutions, we can identify those priority industries and those occupations to try to deal, as David said, with the demand-supply gap here in the area.
Right, so in terms of the results of the study, what priority industries were identified?
3 rose to the top, and they are healthcare and social assistance as one industry sector. Another was manufacturing, and another was educational services. And when we say educational services, we want to make sure people understand we're talking not just about the teaching jobs, but all the jobs represented by those on those campuses, secondary and post-secondary, from office jobs to trades jobs to facilities to business jobs on those campuses.
And as we were going through that identification process, and we narrowed down the 3 priority industries, Patricia and I also made a decision along with our core team to identify 4 other what we describe as other critical industries we felt were really important to our respective regions. And those were finance and insurance, professional scientific, which includes information technology, accommodation and food services, trying to account for, again, the impact of MGM in the area, and then agricultural and sustainable food systems, particularly in the Franklin, Hampshire area. A tremendous amount of farm to table and folks working in the agricultural sphere. So we kind of stepped away from the norm and created 3 priority industries that Patricia just alluded to. But we also felt it was really important to identify 4 other critical areas, and our work is not only focused on those 3 priority industries, but also on those 4 other industries as well, because we think they're really important to the economy in the area here.
Okay, and so what are the goals for workforce development, and what partnerships have been created to help in reaching those goals?
You know, one of the things that I think is important for everyone to understand is the workforce boards and the career centers, we don't do any training. And we're very dependent upon building partnerships, not only with industry, which provides us with strategic guidance and direction as to where we want to go, but we've got a very robust partnership of educational institutions, which includes our 2- and 4-year public and private institutions, as well as our vocational technical high schools. So we work very closely with them in terms of delivering the training that we feel folks need in order to access careers in both these priority and other critical industries. So our partnership is kind of, I want to say, a 3-legged stool. It's really a 4-legged stool. It's the workforce boards, along with its career centers. It's industry giving us the direction we need. It's our educational and training providers. And it's also our community serving organizations, those organizations that provide services and supports to many of the job seekers that we work with on a daily basis. So those 4 entities working together, that's a pretty powerful approach to dealing with workforce development.
I can give you an example of one, if you'd like. The Manufacturing Skills Initiative in the Franklin, Hampshire area is an example of a partnership of all those entities that David mentioned. And about twice a year now, it produces 16 or 17 people who are pre-trained over a 12-week period to go directly into manufacturing jobs at good wages. It takes the efforts of the Voc Tech School, the college, industry themselves, and the workforce boards and career centers and community-based organizations to make that happen.
And that's really one of the, as Patricia said, that's really one of the unique strengths we think we have here in the Pioneer Valley. We have long-standing partnerships, and our partnerships are real. We communicate often and very openly, and we nurture those partnerships. We try to add new partners as we go forward, but we're very fortunate here in that our partnerships are industry-led, not only by the companies with the support from the boards and the one-stop centers, but we're very fortunate to have some really, really good on-the-ground partnerships that allow us to do our work.
And so, David, what kind of progress have you made, and where are you now in implementing this?
Well, for us, the blueprint really guides where we put our resources and how we try to do our reach out to different industries. We could easily just kind of follow kind of the next best flavor of the month, but this blueprint really gives us a focus. So we have a dedicated team for each of those 3 key industries, and we have dedicated individuals who look at work on those 4 other industries. And then what we're trying to do is make sure that we provide the training and skill development for job seekers, either young or middle-aged or older, to work their way into these industries and help them build a career that can sustain themselves and their families.
All right. And so Hampden County has 3 medical centers and the associated medical offices. Now, all the counties have colleges or universities as well as vocational training schools, and they all get goods and services from local businesses. So what role do these major businesses play in reaching your goals?
Yeah, I mean, I think initially, Patricia, when she was speaking about the priority industries, healthcare and social assistance is certainly one of the 3, but probably the key when you look at all that's going on in the region. They have significant needs for staff, but they again need training for both their incumbent employees as well as their new hires. So we work really, really closely with them in developing programs for them, particularly at the community college level, where there's licensing and certifications involved, and majority of the positions coming into the healthcare area. So we work really closely with them, and our educational partners, again, play a critical role in providing the training that the medical facilities need in the area.
They also keep us apprised of changes in their industry. So the healthcare industry is changing a lot. Medical assistants are being used in a whole variety of settings that they didn't used to be. And they need new skills as a result and new varieties of training. And plus the volume of the need has just risen considerably. So they were among the key voices in urging us to establish more medical assisting training opportunities in the region and help more people into them.
Yeah, and as the delivery of care moves outside of the acute care facilities into the community where population health is a critical factor, one of the challenges that I think Patricia and I and David have, going forward is how do we look at the need for services away from the acute care facilities, and how do we build a workforce, direct care workers, home health aides, that can actually take this information, provide these services within the communities in which the residents, i.e. patients, live. And that's something we're working really, really hard to try to figure out the best way to do that, because as Patricia said, that's a new trend, it's an emerging trend, and we need to figure out a way to provide the workforce to deal with that.
Okay, and we will continue our conversation after the break. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about regional employment and job training in Hampden, Hampshire, and Franklin counties. Let's turn to unemployment. What is the unemployment rate in our region?
Right now, the unemployment rate is $12 an hour. It'll go up 75 cents an hour until it reaches $15 an hour in 2023, I think.
The unemployment rate overall for the region is about 3.4%.
Okay, and who is
I'm sorry.
unemployed and why?
Well, obviously, it's kind of a buyer's market right now for job seekers, that they can they have really an advantage in the labor market exchange. The people that we're seeing more and more are people that come in with some kind of barrier, and that requires us to spend a little bit more time to make sure they become ready and get them ready. But they are good candidates once we do what we do.
I think the majority of the candidates, if not all the candidates that approach us, are looking for employment. But for many of our job seekers, they really need three things before they're ready to both get to the labor market and to retain in the labor market. They need educational services, whether it be language skills, whether it be numeracy skills, whether it be digital skills. They need training, as Patricia talked about earlier, the manufacturing training that she's conducting up in Franklin, Hampshire. They need that kind of technical training as well. And in many cases, they need some services and supports to deal with issues like childcare. Transportation is an issue across both counties, all three counties. The issue of childcare, transportation. So part of the services that we provide is to make certain that we can deal with all four of those things and eventually prepare the person for employment. Because our goal is not only to get them a job, but it's to have them persist and retain on the job. And for many of our job seekers, that's been their challenge. It's not so much been getting the job, it's being able to retain the position that they have and be able to find a pathway they can move forward. Our responsibility is to get them ready to both find a job, but also to put them in a position to retain that position.
Right, and so continuing on numbers, how many people do the Mass Hire Career Centers help in a year?
Between the three centers in the Pioneer Valley, we see somewhere between 20 and 25,000 people per year.
And what kind of services and resources are offered at your centers?
There's basically anything you need to get ready to go to work or to make career decisions. So there's the obvious things like resume development and how to network, but there's also work on how to figure out what you want to do and what you're good at, and sometimes more importantly, what you don't want to do. So we work with people so that they can make educated choices about their job decisions and about their career decisions.
How about people who are currently employed, but maybe they're looking for a better job, a better paying job? Are they eligible to the services at your centers?
Yes, we're mandated by something called universal access. So we serve anybody that comes through our doors, whether they're employed, long time, short term, doesn't matter. Whether at the beginning of their career, the end of their career, it doesn't matter. We'll work with everybody.
Yeah, I think there's a significant number of incumbent employees here in the region who are underemployed. They're working every day, they're working full time, but what they're really looking for is a career pathway to move forward. And I think, as Patricia alluded to earlier, that was one of the major reasons of identifying these priority industries, where we could get folks into these industries where we know there's a career pathway, both financially, but also from an occupational position. So we serve a number of folks that are underemployed who are looking again to get in a position where they can, move forward in a more structured pathway.
And who are the biggest employers and what types of jobs do they offer?
I think the hospitals are among the biggest employers in all of our region. The University of Massachusetts, and then fellow educational institutions, a big employer. In our part of the region, a company like CNS Wholesale has a lot of jobs, and Yankee Candle.
Yeah, and I think one of the areas that the three of us really focus on is we believe we are a region of small and medium-sized enterprises. We have our legacy industries and our large facilities, as Patricia just alluded to, but we really are working and continue to work real hard to try to respond to the needs of our small and medium-sized enterprises. We believe that that's the strength in the job creation in the region here, and they cover many industries, some of which aren't even covered in those 7 that we've articulated earlier. So one of our commitments and one of our challenges and a great opportunity is to really help them find the talent they need and retain the talent. They don't always have the resources, either from an HR perspective or a recruitment perspective, to be able to find the people. And the career centers in particular, play that role very well.
David, what jobs are in high demand?
Well, the jobs in high demand actually do follow the blueprint. So healthcare they're always looking, they never seem to have enough. Manufacturing is an evolving industry, so there's a lot of different kind of skills than the traditional skills that maybe their grandparents used to have. Education is a constant, and the 4 other ones are really growing. Hospitality in Western Mass, obviously, even before MGM, was a crucial industry, and now it's becoming even bigger. So we're always focusing on kind of those industries, and the research that was done in the blueprint is accurate, that it really models what we see coming in as job openings.
And this is for you as well. Mass Hire Holyoke recently received awards for the state for working with court-involved individuals and for helping hurricane evacuees from Puerto Rico. What are the issues for persons who have been incarcerated?
Well, but first of all, I would say even though we won the award, it was done in a regional sort of way, so we worked with the other career centers and the workforce boards. For people coming out of the prison system, there are a number of issues. They may still be dealing with health and addiction kind of issues. They may be dealing with not knowing quite who they are and who they want to be. We find them very motivated, and they really tend to be really good employees. We've hired a number of them over the years. But they come out wanting to prove something to their families, to their community, and maybe more importantly to themselves, that they can get out of that cycle that put them in the jail in the first place. And many of them need pretty basic skills. They need to hone up on their essential skills, but they also need occupational skill training, and we need to give them that support. And we try to do that in a way that gives them guidance, support, and encouragement all at the same time.
I think one of the advantages that we've had, which is why our programs have been so successful here in the region, is that we believe that you need to start this work while they're still behind the wall. You can't begin this work on the day they get released. You need to start this work well before their actual release date. So you deal with their language skills, their literacy skills. If you can do some technical training, you do that. But particularly you deal with those employability skills, and you put them in a position when they are released that housing and things of that nature, again, or at least there's some work that's been done, so that when they come out and they are released, that again, some of those services they're familiar with, they've had a little bit of training, so you're not starting again from scratch on the day that they're released. I think that's been one of the key factors of our success, that we believe that what you do behind the wall is a clear predictor of how successful they're going to be when they get out.
We actually tend to meet people the day they get incarcerated. We want to start that relationship as early as possible and change the nature of their incarceration from punitive to rehabilitative. And the prisons here are really good at that. They take that focus seriously.
And lastly, in terms of evacuees from Puerto Rico, how many people have you helped?
Well, we saw right around 1,000 people, and that was a pretty traumatic time. They were coming out, they were truly in trauma. They, in many cases, they didn't know if their relatives were alive or dead. They were coming with a different set of skills. The economy in Puerto Rico was quite a bit different, so we had to really get them trusting us and get them trained up and work on all the other issues like housing and childcare and education and all that.
All right, thank you, David. After the break, we'll be discussing the difference between minimum wage and a living wage. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about economic development and employment opportunities in the Pioneer Valley. The federal minimum wage has been $7.25 an hour for 10 years. Tipped workers, hourly wages even less, and inflation has made those wages impossible for some people to get out of poverty. 1 to 2 bedroom apartments can go from $650 to over $1,000 a month plus utilities. So let's talk about minimum wage here in Massachusetts.
Well, thank heavens we live in a state that has already made minimum wage $12 an hour and has had the foresight to do that because I think it's part of why the state is being successful in economic development and job development.
Yeah, and I think as Patricia said, the minimum wage right now is $12 an hour, and it's going to rise by 75 cents each year until January 1 of 23, when it will arrive at that $15 minimum wage, which we keep hearing about. And we have service workers right now that I think are starting at $4.35 an hour, and over the next 5 years there's going to be 60-cent increments that we're going to get them to $6.75 on January 1 of 2023. So that wage move from 12 to 15 is not something that's going to happen again from the state's perspective. It's going to be phased in over a period of time.
What's interesting to me is that some of these entry-level occupations we've been talking about that are in the blueprint are already bringing on their entry-level workers at close to $15 an hour with opportunities for advancement.
And how about wait staff? They get tips, but what is their hourly rate looking like?
Yeah, right now I believe that they're starting at, I believe it's $4.35 an hour, and over the next 4 years, up to January 1 of 2023, they're going to see increments of 60 cents an hour, which will get them to $6.75 on January 1 of 2023, which is certainly much different than the $15 an hour if you're not working in that particular industry.
And how about the laws regarding reporting tips?
So anyone who earns more than $20 a month in tips has to report it as if it were earnings. So they have to calculate it, they have to keep track of it, and they have to report it. And it's taxed like any other wage.
And so what do you think the national minimum wage should be raised to?
Well, I think that, I think Patricia hit it on the head. I think that in most industries, I think you'll find that folks are not paying the minimum wage, because one of the challenges that all companies have today, whether it's here in the Valley, whether it's across the state, or quite frankly the country, is just a dearth of talent. And I think folks have realized that in order to attract talent, to professionally develop talent, and to retain talent, they're going to have to move beyond that minimum wage in most industries. There are probably some industries that may be seasonal, that may be cyclical, that's a wage that probably makes sense for that business. But here in the Valley, where we have some very high value businesses, most companies have moved well beyond that $12 minimum wage, because they realize in order to attract and retain their workforce and to be competitive, they're going to have to do that. So the debate about wages, again, is very real, and we understand both sides of that issue. But we believe, again, in order to retain your workforce, you're going to have to pay them a livable wage that they can take care of their family and that they can move forward.
$15 an hour is a worthwhile goal. One of the things that the state has to think about, though, is that for companies that are reliant on state reimbursement for services, such as the nursing homes, if their reimbursement rates don't go up, then it's very difficult for them to raise their wages. And so the certified nurse aides, they do wonderful work, great work, much needed work, and their companies would like to reward them for that, and they would also like to compete for the best certified nurse aides and medical assistants that they can find. But they have to look at what they have to be able to pay it.
And those present policy issues that
Yes.
need to be dealt with, at a state level, and less so than a regional level.
Now, what's considered a living wage?
A living wage is obviously dependent on the size of the household, but statistics show that a single person needs to make somewhere around $12 an hour to sustain an apartment and live. The people I know and I work with probably don't agree with that. As the household goes up, if there's two parents with one or two children, that the sustainable wage would be around $63,000. And according to what we know, approximately 60% of the households in this region they live below that wage. So it presents a real issue. And as David alluded to earlier, it kind of poverty sustains poverty, and it's a hard cycle to break. And you can only break it by raising the minimum wage and kind of changing how we do some of this.
And so how would a higher minimum wage impact the bottom line for smaller businesses?
Well, I think the smaller businesses are the ones that, at least from our perspective, are the ones that are driving job creation here in the region. And for them, a minimum wage could potentially be a little bit of a strain on their bottom line going forward. But I think as they look out and look at their book of business, look at their competition, and look at where they want to take their own business, in many cases they can't get there without some talent, and they have to be able to retain that talent. And you're going to have to pay a wage package that includes both wages and benefits that's going to allow you to attract that and retain that employee. But also we realize that you need to stay within a certain financial scope yourself. But it's for a lot of the companies, again, that we work with, they've come to the realization, again, that in order to, I keep repeating myself, to retain that workforce, they're going to have to offer those competitive wages and benefits.
The gradual phase-in helps because it allows employers to plan. The other thing that I've heard employers, we've given employers the advice to make sure you make good hires and that you're ready to invest in them, because that may feel like a lot of money to pay for somebody at minimum wage. Well, then make them your best worker and one that you want to keep in advance. Keep them with you instead of sort of encouraging anything that would create churn in your industry and having to retrain and rehire.
It's important to note in many industries, their first look when they're looking for new employees is they're looking for people that are already employed within the industry that are making less money. So it's almost a competitive play field of the companies, and they're seeing this person's doing the same thing I need and they're getting $12 an hour. If I pay them 14 hours, I can lower them over. So there's a lot of that goes on, and so raising the wage will impact that and level out the field a little bit.
And lastly, what programs do you offer specifically for teens and young adults trying to find jobs?
I think that's one of our strengths. I mean, right now our Youth Work summer programs are finishing tomorrow, and I know here in Hampden County we put to work about 650 young people this summer, and they've been paid a minimum wage for 25 to 30 hours a week, and that's a really critical program. Again, our young people, again, have access to all our training programs, and as David said earlier, a good number of the job seekers that approach his center and center here in Springfield and in Greenfield are young people who are looking to begin their careers. So we have a really very significant commitment, to deal with young people.
And then the other part of our youth services is in the School to Career Connecting Activities program, which serves high schools across the region through staff at the workforce boards on an outreach basis. It's a terrific resource.
All right. And when we return, we'll learn about the role community colleges are playing in job training and economic development. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about the employment training and job opportunities in Western Massachusetts. Joining me now to talk about how higher education plays a role in regional economic development and job training is Kermit Dunkelberg, Assistant Vice President of Adult Basic Education and Workforce Development at Holyoke Community College. Thank you for being with us today.
Sure.
We've been talking with representatives of Mass Higher and discussed the importance of partnerships with higher education. What roles do colleges, universities, and vocational training schools play in the long-term economic development of our region?
Well, they play an enormous role, and it's a multi-generational impact that we have. So there's an immediate impact. If an individual comes to community college and earns an associate's degree, they will on average earn $10,000 a year more than just having a high school diploma. But when you look at the overall economic impact, we had a study done by MC, it's an economic modeling firm, a couple of years ago, and they concluded that the overall economic impact of Holyoke Community College in 1 year is $215 million for the region. That's in terms of increased earnings, of increased spending as a result of that, of taxes generated, and we impact industries directly. $27 million impact in the healthcare industry is the top one.
And in addition to offering education and training opportunities, schools are also employers and utilize local businesses for their goods and services, making them an essential part of the local economy. So, about how many people work at HCC?
We have about 500 full-time employees and about 1,000 overall, and that has an economic impact of about $15 million a year. $55 million a year in terms of a spending impact in the region. 94% of us live in the Pioneer Valley.
How much of an impact does it have on Holyoke and surrounding communities?
We work really closely with a lot of community partners, particularly in the city of Holyoke, but within the whole region, and this is true of other educational institutions in the area. We really try to understand what the community needs are and respond to those needs. So not just the economic or employment needs, but also the social needs of the region. Both Holyoke Community College and Springfield Technical Community College are designated Hispanic serving institutions. So we're responding to the changes in the demographics here in the region, where that population continues to grow and has specific needs around sometimes language issues or cultural issues if there are more recent immigrants coming to the area.
Now let's talk about a school's involvement in workforce development programs. What is the Business and Community Services Division at HCC?
Well, we like to say that our division is about helping people get a job, keep a job, or get a better job. But really, we encompass a whole lot of things. As the previous panelists were talking about, a lot of job seekers, first of all, require getting a high school diploma or working on their English language skills before they can really move into a career. So we meet people where they are. We try to meet their educational and training needs. And we also are designed to respond to the needs of business and industry in the area. So we're trying to be along with the career centers and the workforce boards, to be a partner in bridging that gap between the individual job seeker and the needs of the region in terms of industry and business.
And do you offer any programs for people who may be looking for a new career or want to advance in their current field?
Yes, both. A lot of our programs are designed for job seekers. Now that may be people who are working for the first time, or it may be people who have been unemployed for a while. It may be people who are transitioning from one kind of career to another. But we also have programs for incumbent workers. We have a program together with Springfield Technical Community College called Training and Workforce Options, where we train workers within an industry, within a company. So we try to help people at every stage of that career pathway.
And let's talk about career centers and job placement and internship offerings at schools. How important is it for students and businesses to utilize that?
It's really critical, and we are trying to work more closely with the career centers in Holyoke and Springfield, as well as with our internal career center at Holyoke Community College. You know, experience is really the key. When we're talking about job seekers, and they need knowledge, they need to know things about the industry, they need skills, they need to be able to do things, but they also need to have done things. They need experience to put on a resume, and that's often what a younger job seeker is missing. So internships, cooperative education, apprenticeships, these are all ways to really get in there, get some experience, and find out, is this what I really like to do every day? Is this the right environment for me? But also be able to build that work history.
And as you know, people's schedules are extremely busy these days. Online education is growing rapidly as a result of that. What online workforce programs does HCC offer?
So we offer quite a bit, and we're continuing to do more in this area. We recently developed with a local company an online program for security. We are getting ready with a group called C3RN, the Cannabis Care Community Care and Research Network, to offer some online training for the cannabis industry. We're putting some healthcare training online, and we're looking a lot at hybrid models also, where some of it's face-to-face and some of it's online.
And do most higher education institutions have departments that offer economic development and job training programs?
Yes, I would say certainly community colleges do a lot of this, but increasingly four-year colleges are looking at this as well and offering quite a bit. Holyoke Community College is very invested in this because a lot of people who come to us, they really have an immediate need for a job while they continue their education, figure out what career they want, and then advance along a career pathway. So we need to have all the rungs of the ladder in place.
And what sorts of jobs do you see that the students are looking for?
We have a lot of people interested in human services. We have our largest department is our Foundations of Health department, so a lot of people interested in healthcare or other caring industries. Things like recovery coaches, addiction services, things like that are very big. Also, people interested in starting their own business. We have a lot of students interested in doing that. And the sectors that the previous panel mentioned, manufacturing, IT, culinary, hospitality, agriculture.
And again, what would you say to people out there just about these resources being available for them?
I would say that there's something for everyone, no matter where you're starting. And if you're not quite sure where it is you want to go, we can help you figure that out.
Right. And let's again talk about online schooling. So a lot of people, they're just extremely busy. They might not know that there are resources for people who are doing online schooling. So let's just touch on that again.
Yeah, sure. It is really especially valuable for people who are working. And to give an example, we have a nurse aide training program that we've been running, and we've been talking now about putting some of that online, because once our nurse aides go and start working as nurse aides, they're not going to have time to go to a 20-hour-a-week program to move on to the next occupational level. So we need to give them the digital literacy skills that they can actually be able to advance in their career later on.
Right, and so when students are coming in, what are some of the things that they're looking for?
Many do not know yet, and that's one of the things. This is where experience comes in. Like, I'm not quite sure what I want. So you start with those questions about, well, what do you like to do? Or what have you done? Maybe not for work. Maybe you haven't been paid to do this. Maybe you've been taking care of a family member and you really have this caring aptitude, but you didn't really think about it beyond your own family. You just thought, you didn't think about that as a career. You were just doing it because you love someone. But now you can learn how to use the skills that you developed in that way to actually build a career.
And what about for people who have been in the workforce for years and then they decide maybe this isn't what they want to do or they don't like, and they're starting over, they're just unsure what to do? What would you say?
Yeah, it's a scary place to be, right? And one of the things we do is try to help people realize that they do have experience and skills that are valuable, even if maybe the labor market is changing and some of the work that they used to do, there might not be as big a demand for. We're getting more, as many colleges are, into the opportunities to also give some college credit for that prior work experience, to shorten the pathway to a degree and really validate, and say, look, what you've done is important, it's worth something. We're going to give you some college credit for that and help you figure out what your next career move is.
All right, thank you. And we'll continue our conversation after the break. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today we've been talking about the employment training and job opportunities in Western Massachusetts. Community collaborations and partnerships are key to the implementation and success of any economic development and job training programs. HCC, GCC, and STIC have collaborated on many programs and initiatives, including the Job Readiness Initiative, Train or Training resources, and internship networks, and two also known as Training and Workforce Option. So what is Train and why was it created?
So TRAIN was a statewide initiative through the Department of Higher Education. It's an acronym, and it stands for Training, Resources, and Internship Networks, as you said. It was put out by the Department of Higher Ed, and community colleges were the eligible bidders to bid on it. And the purpose of it was to get long-term or underemployed job seekers, or underemployed meaning they're working but not earning enough to make ends meet, into opportunities for job training. And there needed to be a component of work experience in some regard. So the word internship was used pretty flexible in this case. It meant getting people some kind of experience. We convened the partnership regionally to ask, what should our response to this request for proposals be? And that meant bringing in the community colleges, the career centers, the workforce boards, several employers, And we tossed around some ideas. Should we focus on a particular industry? Should we focus on manufacturing? Should we focus on culinary and hospitality? What we ultimately decided, all of us together, was there's a tier of job readiness that is critical across all industries. And in every sector, employers are not able to hire people because they don't have these basic job readiness skills. On the previous panel, David Gadare made the point that the people who are still unemployed at this point have multiple barriers, right? So we needed to address that. We needed to help them overcome the physical things like transportation, childcare, having enough to eat, as well as how to put a resume together, how to do a job search, how to interview for a job, as well as some soft skills, communication skills, on-the-job skills, and a little bit of technical training. So it was an ambitious project, and we focused just on the job readiness skills by working with the career centers as the deliverer of that part of the training. And our goal was within 3 weeks to help people become more job ready and also identify what career pathway they wanted to enter into. And then we had a couple of opportunities for further training in culinary and hospitality and manufacturing, or we also linked up with other training that already existed that was not funded through this specific grant and provided pathways that way.
Okay, and could you talk about the partnership between those three schools? So it's HCC, STIC, and GCC.
Yeah, this was a project that was very much in the spirit of the Pioneer Valley Blueprint. It was a Pioneer Valley-wide initiative. Up and down the valley, we delivered the same training in Springfield, in Holyoke, and in Greenfield. And that took a lot of coordination among all of us. Some of the features worked out a little differently depending on the region. So in Greenfield, for example, they found that their group needed more support with digital literacy, and they incorporated more of that. In Springfield and in Greenfield, there was more of an emphasis on manufacturing. In Holyoke, a little bit more on culinary and hospitality. We do have a long history of working with STIC also on training and workforce options, which I know we're going to talk about also. We partner also in other ways. We partner very closely with STIC on adult education in Springfield. Holyoke Community College actually provides the ESOL, or English for Speakers of Other Languages, classes in STIC's program on their campus.
Now, the first students began the program in March, and what were the results?
Really pretty surprisingly good. I mean, we had hoped to enroll 60 people. We actually enrolled 72. We had 68 complete. So that's a 94% completion rate, which is virtually unheard of, serving a population with multiple barriers and with whose skills were also low. Now, part of that is it was only a 3 to 5 week training, so it was a short time. But another piece of it was the supports that we put in place. So in most cases, we served lunch every day. We really tried to help mitigate some of the things that might get in the way of someone not completing the program. But what we also heard from the participants was, this is really what I needed. This is really relevant. This is really helping me. So that got them there every day. Once we completed the program, as I said, we had opportunities to go on to other job training or directly into employment or to further education. So right now, we are at a 94% rate where 94% of the participants have either enrolled in a training program, enrolled in college, or are currently working. And that's, in this kind of work, that's really kind of a spectacular result. And again, I think it goes back to the strength of the collaboration, the input that we had in the design, and really addressing the multitude of needs that people have.
All right, so you said good results. Will this program continue in the fall?
Mm-hmm. So this was funded through a state line item, right? A line item in the state budget. It's in the state budget again for next year, so train is in the state budget. We're awaiting the release of the request for proposals for the coming year, and we assume that it will look much like the RFP last year. We will then convene our partners again and say, okay, it's a year later. Do we still want to continue that same approach with basic job readiness? Do we want to do something different? We did have a convening of the partners about a month ago to debrief how everything went, and I would say that there was a lot of enthusiasm over how much success we had had.
And could you talk about the 2 program?
Yeah. So 2 is a partnership between STCC and Holyoke Community College. We started in 2010, I want to say, and this is specifically to meet the needs of employers and to do what we call contract training. So we'll do a contract with an employer to customize training for that employer. The online security training that I mentioned in the earlier segment was developed with Eastern States Exposition, the Big E. They wanted that online training for their employees, so we met with them, determined what their needs were, designed a training to fit their needs, and delivered that training. That's what 2 does. So it's focused on the incumbent worker and it's focused on the needs of the employers.
And there's also the Jumpstart program.
Yeah. So Jumpstart is a program that is for people who are receiving public assistance, like TAFDC, DTA cash benefits, and it's to help them get the job training they need to become employed and eventually work their way off of public benefits. Now, there's a lot we could say about that process. It's not an easy one to negotiate, and it's not like an immediate off switch where now I have a job, I'm all done with the benefits. It takes time to work your way off of those benefits and work your wage up to a level where you don't need those benefits any longer. But the starting place is getting that occupational training and a lot of coaching, a lot of support in how to mitigate those other barriers: childcare, transportation, time management, organizational skills, all of that.
Lastly, how can someone apply or enroll for these programs?
Well, you can go to our website, hcc.edu/workforce, and that will bring up all the information about those programs. Also, you could call 413-552-2500, and we're also on Facebook, HCC Workforce Development.
Again, right there, so you can just log on there and there's the number for you to call right there on your screen. We also have a link on our website at WWLP.com with all that information that you'll need. And we'll have the last word for you after the break. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today you've been watching 22 News in Focus, and we've been talking about the employment training and job opportunities in Western Massachusetts. This wraps up our program for today, but we of course want to thank our guests for joining us, and thank you to you at home for watching. But if you missed any of it, you can watch it in full on our website at WWLP.com. From all of us here at 22 News, we wish you a great day.